This episode is sponsored by Property Filter. Find great deals faster.
Hello and welcome to the Financial Freedom Podcast, sponsored by us at Property Portfolio Building. This podcast is designed by real people on their journey to achieving financial freedom, and we'll focus on people who've either already attained it, who are joining us on that journey, or maybe a specialist topic that can help you build your technical knowledge to achieving and maintaining that financial freedom. We hope you enjoy it.
So welcome back to the Financial Freedom Podcast. Today we welcome Ritchie Clapson. Ritchie has over 40 years of experience in the property sector. He's done projects large and small and everything in between, which sort of starts at the end of the London Olympics construction and small commercial to resi conversions and lots of other projects as well. He currently is the only industry qualified property development trainer, I think is the right way to describe it. And he is, strong in the sort of commentary world in the property space as well, with always a very sort of straight to the point view on property, don't you? So
No.
Yeah.
There we are.
Great to have you. Welcome to the show.
For a podcast, Richie. I love that. Yeah. Good.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Great to have you. So just to start with, I just want you to share a bit about your sort of development journey. And then what motivated you to start training other property developers or sort of inexperienced property developers in a way?
That's assuming I was motivated to do it, doesn't it?
Yes.
So my experience started, thanks for saying I've over 40 years. So basically...
Don't look a day over 39.
Thank you very much. I much prefer you, Phil, than Tim. So I started at 16 years old on the drawing board, actually. Went on the drawing board and then worked my way up and became a chartered structural engineer. So that's my industry profession.
Yeah.
Realised that was complex and time-consuming and somewhat boring. Didn't really.
Were you I-struct E or were you C-Eng?
I am I-struct E. Yeah, I-struct E. And my son is now a C-Eng. Oh, C-Eng, chartered engineer, Institute of Structural Engineers, not civils. Were you saying civils or structures?
ICE. Or
no,
I-struct E.
I-struct E.
Yeah.
Structures.
Aren't you?
My son is civils,
right.
And so my son says he's a far better engineer now than I ever have been. So, which is probably right. Yeah. So I was a concept engineer and I was a businessman. So by my mid-late 20s, I bought my first business with no money and started getting into business and structuring businesses. So I've been in the property space pretty much all my life. I've dabbled with lots of other businesses, whether it's investment or owned or turnarounds and stuff. But I've always had a focus on the property, the construction industry. I owned a construction company for my sins at one point, but that's a whole nother story. And during that journey, you naturally get involved with developers. So first of all, you are working for developers, then you work with developers, then you do some joint ventures. And so I just found that I had this sort of no-nonsense approach, as you say. Just
we like that.
Say it how it is, and with a bit of sarcasm, good old English sarcasm, call people out and get things done. I could get things done. I could just tell people how it is and pull them together and make things happen. So I ended up working with a lot of developers and helping them develop better. Because if I think back in those years, 25, 30 years ago, there was no education for developers. So developers were often tradespeople more often than not.
Yes.
That started building. And so their education, even in itself, was often minimal. So I ended up working with them, trying to do it better. And then along that journey, started doing some of my own stuff. I did a lot of stuff with other people, just invested here, invested there, almost silently, but got involved. Then people said, would you help me? So I sort of just trained them. And I trained people privately. That sort of went along.
So direct sort of mentoring at that time.
Direct mentoring, yeah. Small groups, one-to-ones, that sort of thing. And I tried to charge them too much, but they kept coming back. I sort of, if I charge you this, then you won't. But they did. And I actually then retired in 2010. Sold out my engineering business, which, as you say, reached the high level of working for the government on the Olympic Stadium, peer reviewing that. And I retired and sold out in 2008 for a 7-figure sum, retired in 2010, hung my boots up. And that was sort of it. But I dabbled with lots of other things. And eventually, one of my students, to get to the answer, the final bit of the question, what motivated me to get into training, one of my students that I was doing private mentoring with at the end of a year program in a short group said to me, we should start a property training company. And I said, no, thank you. He said, would you like another beer? I said, yes, please. And then he asked me again, we should start a property training company. I said, no, thank you. And he got me. My limit was probably about 4.5 pints. And I know I should never drink that much. And so he got me and I went, okay, let's talk about it.
If you're in your early 20s, it'd have been the 9-10 pints, right?
No. I think only once in my life I might have done that. And I was terribly...
So how long have you been retired at that point?
Oh, well, so this was...
were you reluctant because you were retired?
No, that wasn't. It wasn't because I was retired, because I sort of retired. I retired. It's funny. Retirement's a funny thing.
It is.
And we were just talking off camera just now about what's your goal, what you want to do. I was just talking with Tim, and I think I retired and I thought that was it. I remember the day back in 2010, I left central London where my office was, and I'd shipped all my kit out and I walked over Waterloo Bridge and I thought I'd never have to come back to this damn place. And I went home.
Yeah.
I remember my wife saying to my daughter, who it was 10 years old, Daddy's finished work. And she started crying. Mum said, what's the matter? Well, we'll have no money. Because she sort of recalled children from school whose fathers had been made redundant. And it's sort of...
And they were having financial problems.
And how do you explain to a 10-year-old, no, it's okay, we got a couple of quid in the bank. Anyway, so it wasn't the retirement bit, because I did get bored. That's why I ended up investing in a construction company and the guy ripped me off for £500,000. But that's another story again. So we... I suppose, I've always liked doing stuff. And I then understood, I think that the concept of retirement is not really what I wanted to do. Yeah. And I actually was chatting to someone yesterday, funny enough, and I said, if you look at actors and singers and then, I think it was Joan Armatrading was on a Jonathan Ross show recently at 75 years old. I looked her up on. Yeah. I thought, wow, 75, still doing her art. And what I then realised, I thought, well, if I do something I enjoy, then it's okay. And the thing then that I found, which my business partner was very astute at, is that he said, you'll enjoy this. But the reason I didn't want to do it, as we well know, the training space is full of a lot of people who perhaps we wouldn't really wish to recommend.
Yes, there's good and bad, aren't there? And different ethics from different chains, you could say, and things like that. Maybe is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying they're right or wrong. People just work in different ways, yes. and I didn't really feel that was a space I wanted to be in. But what motivated me? Ian Child, my business partner, motivated me.
So he had some energy he brought to the table.
He just, what he did, Phil, he said, "You'll love this.
Yeah,
you'll love this," and I wasn't sure I would, but actually what I then said is, I said, okay, the only bits I really want to do are, and what we actually said is, funny enough, we sat down and we said, okay, well, what we'll do would be, let's sit down, we need to record some modules. If we're going to do this, we said we will be the best in the industry. That's it. Mm-hmm. That was our only criteria. If we only train 3 people, or 300 or 3,000 or 30,000, we'll just be the best.
Be the best at it, yeah.
And if we do that, then the business will come. I didn't have any intention to be the biggest.
And obviously you found a space and a bit of a niche there, because in the property sector, there's a lot of trainers for like property investment strategies and all these sort of things, but there is very limited people that train, the actual development side and the refurb and conversion, all those sort of things, which it's very hard to invest in property at all without doing or having those sort of skills really ultimately to do it well.
Yeah, I think I need the two parts. You sort of often need that cash flowing, that portfolio building, if that's what you need. A lot of people don't, and you need the lumps of cash. And the interesting thing that we found was a large, I would say more than half of our demographic of our students come in, and we now have a lot that's in there, have no interest in building a portfolio. Now, inevitably they might, because they've got to put their lumps of cash somewhere. Yeah. But they don't need that passive income. Some of them are quite wealthy. Some of them have got other businesses. I was with a guy yesterday who I actually interviewed, and he's an RIS surveyor, and he said, I love what I do. I just wanted to make some other lumps of cash. Yeah. I don't intend to shut my business down. Yeah. And he has no intention to extend his portfolio.
Honestly, this is why I was so excited to have you on, because we spend ages talking to people. And we did a strategy podcast 2 podcasts ago, I think it's episode 21 or something, and we talk about this wealth hierarchy, right? And it comes down to 3 things: cash flow, profit, assets, right? So if you've got enough of the top one, you don't need the other 2. If you've got none of the top 2, you need the bottom one. Because you can't do property development with no money and no cash flow, because you have to live, right? So it depends where people are up to. And I try and get this across And when I started, I wanted to replace my salary. I didn't have any assets to pay me. I didn't have any development potential. I couldn't wait 2 years to get development profit.
Yeah.
I needed cash flow.
Yeah.
So cash flow, strategies were the ones to focus on for me at the time. Now, we're looking at profit plays, and we're looking at, maybe long-term assets that I never even think about, just to keep that ticking over so we can focus on the more fun things to do.
Yeah.
And it's just about working up that chain, in my opinion, which is, if you surround yourself with cash flow first, whether that be your business, your job, if you love it.
Yeah.
If you're a GP and you think, I love what I do, and you've got 10 years left,
Yeah.
why are you doing cash flow assets? Do the profit bit and the top bit, which is you do a property development.
I think sometimes with two, so if you got a job that is really, really secure, it's really not
or a business that you
it's
love,
not going to go in here for 10 years, and a business that you love, you sort of nailed the cash flow.
Yeah.
But if you've got, there are jobs where you could be made redundant, or you could lose in the next few years. That's where you got to weigh up the, well, maybe I do need some property cash flow or something like that.
You can protect against those things, right? You can take insurances, and if you're business owner, you take insurance against your passing or your serious illness or whatever, and you can protect your cash flow to a degree.
Yeah, you can.
But if you are, no, I want to do this and I want to get cash flow from property, then you have to start with your cash flow strategies to replace your salary. That's where most people are. But why I really like what Ritchie does is because he says, well, actually, if you don't need it in the next 2 years, getting a massive capital event can give you enough cash flow for the next 2 years, and then you can roll it over.
And also it can help raise the capital for your investing, if you want to build up an investment portfolio as well.
Yeah. There's this natural sort of route. Sometimes people come in and they end of a project and they've got 300,000 in their pocket, or they don't need that 300,000 to go again on the next development, particularly if they focus on what the term that we sort of coined is small scale property development.
Yeah.
Which we emphasize the importance of it, and we have a description of it, and we describe and guide people towards what that is. And that 300,000 is spare.
Yeah.
So then people go, what do I do with that? So quite often then we're sort of pushing them to someone else to educate them on building that portfolio, because at that point,
and it can work hand in hand at that point, can't it, with what you do and like the other sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, and there's a difference between if you get that level of profit from a project and you go and buy a bunch of buy-to-lets or commercial property, which is just going to give you a yield for the next 20 years. That's a big difference to having to replace your salary within 2 years and having to do a service accommodation on HMOs. Yeah. That's a completely different strategy. That's your pension assets, really. That's what we talk about. You can still get property assets at the top end, but you've got to get that profit bit. Putting 30 grand, 40 grand into your first buy-to-let, or doing 2 buy-to-lets and getting 600 quid a month, you're not retiring on that, right?
It's quite a lot of money, but it's not enough, is it?
Yeah, well, it's good, but it's not great, And you sit there and I've got 60 grand sat there. No one capital's appreciated, but it's just a number on a page.
People don't think about that. I sometimes stand up on a stage at events and I say, okay, who's got 50,000 to invest? Because the average investment in the UK is £75,000. So I say, okay, you need the 25 for all the costs. You got 50,000 to put into a buy-to-let. What can you buy for 200? A flat, great, put that in. Who fancies doing that?
We're in the north, you can buy a mansion up here. Just don't forget where you are.
You can buy the north.
You can buy Manchester.
but you end up in this position where you get this hundreds of pounds rather than thousands. And I go, what do you think of that? And of course, they've saved up this 50,000, this 100,000 for so long.
Taken a while, yeah.
But so the space we're in, I think, is an interesting space. And what I think I found about that space was fascinating, the property development training space, that there was a few people in it, not many, a few people dabbling.
Yeah.
And then when you looked at, and of course, a lot of those interested, since we came into the space back in 2016, 2017, we really started developing the business.
Yeah.
I think we spent a year developing the business to make sure the business was right so we could be the best.
Yeah.
And then we took our first students on back in 2018, 2019. But there was a lot of people that were in the space who've disappeared. And when you actually then look back, and I don't wish to judge, but when you look back, you can say actually their experience in the space was very short. And if you've been in buy-to-lets for 5 years, you've learned quite a lot. But in development, 2-3 projects.
Yeah, it's not
a huge amount. Because I say this in 20 years in managing projects, and there's lots that has happened in that period.
Yeah.
And then you see someone that is a project manager at HMO that, like you said, has done 2, and they're like, I'm a project manager.
As an example, I started my first development project in 2020. We sat here in 2025, and we've done together 47 deals in total. Together. 41 of them for clients, right? To fruition, I was looking back to actually finishing. I think of that 41 that we've done, we've actually completed something like 19. So we still have in somewhere in between conveyancing, project development.
Fully let out.
Yeah. So in 5 years, even though we're doing roughly 2 a month, we've only got to 19 of that 42 that we've done. So that is absolute. If you're doing development, it's over a time frame. You experience level. So unless you're doing lots like we are, because if you think that we're balancing at the moment 10 planning applications right here, right now. So unless you're doing it in quantum, if you're doing it as a small to medium person, just doing one at a time, your experience is over a longer timeline. You don't,
and you don't get as many variances, do you? If you've done 1 or 2 projects.
That's it. You need. Yeah, you need those variances to come and hit you.
Yeah,
and to get the real learnings sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's we often get asked this question in the room because the way we set up the program to train people, it's very much based around how we used to train people privately. It was right, we'll educate you with some modules. So they have 8 weeks of like open university style modules. We'll educate you with those. And then what you're going to have is you're going to have a ton of questions. And then we will mentor and coach you around that. And on top of myself mentoring and coaching them, we have a whole industry professional coaching team. So we have structural engineers, we have architects, project managers, quantity surveyors.
Yeah.
And of course, business coaches, mindset coaches, branding coaches. So we have a whole team of coaches. So it's modules, questions, coaches, and everything runs through that process. And it's interesting. I often get asked in the room, someone says, "Oh, wow, you seem to have an answer for everything." Well, it's because I've been around a long time. But the in-the-room sessions are a fundamental part of the learning.
Yeah.
And sometimes people say, "But why can't you just write all those answers down?" I said, because I can't think of all until you ask me a question. I've run now twice a year a 4-day masterclass, which I run myself. I stand on stage for 4 days. I take people on a journey of a project that we did a whole fly on the wall from beginning to end, warts and all. And some people say to me, "Is that not boring? Because you just run it year in, year out, twice a year." Every time it's different because over 4 days, 50 people are asking me so many different questions.
Yeah. Lots of different scenarios.
Yeah, but yet you always have an answer. And you can only do that if you've got over 40 years experience.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Right, moving forward then. So we're the Financial Freedom Podcast. We always want to hear from our guests what their definition or meaning of financial freedom is, and also where are you on that journey?
So where am I on financial freedom journey? If we answer that one first of all, but clearly if I retired 15 years ago, then I'm probably at that point, depending on what your definition is.
But yeah, as in your definition, this is your definition.
So my definition, I suppose, which I've never really thought too much about, is to better do what I want when I want.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. And so fundamentally, it's about time. Yeah. So time is the wealth thing behind it.
Yeah.
And I think it's different for different people. If your definition of that time and what you want is different to mine. So if I want to fly around the world twice a year, live in my home over here, and drive fast cars and fly helicopters, then I need more money.
Yeah.
If my definition or my acceptance of that is somewhat different, so if I'm quite happy to live in a static home and drive an old car and go down to Wetherspoons for lunch on a Sunday, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and I come across and met people that they're living the dream. Yeah. That's their definition of financial freedom. They've got time freedom
as well.
They've got it. So I think it's different things to different people. So time freedom for me was achieved. It was achieved on an exit of a business which yielded a big lump sum of cash. So
and how long did that take you? Just as a, so you set the business up when did you then, how long did it take you?
That was 10 years.
10 years.
So interestingly, I set that business up in 98. And I said to myself, I'm going on a 10-year journey, I'm going to sell it within 10 years. And everyone said to me, "You're nuts, you can't plan 10 years. I said, "Of course you can." I must admit, they were probably slightly right. I didn't hit the 10-year journey. I missed it by 4 days.
Right.
So this is sale completed.
Sale completed.
Yeah.
So it was a big...
So you started going out to market. How far before that?
So in the sale of that business, we went to the market 12 months before the sale.
12 months.
6 months secured an opportunity, then you've got to go through the whole
6 months legals and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a whole host with that. We actually, in terms of building businesses for sale, because I used to lecture and talk to people about this and help people build businesses for sale, that journey was 3 years out. So 3 years out. So you mentioned Olympic Stadia involved in that. Now, I'm just a little guy from the South Coast, not the best engineer in the world. How did I become the owner of a company that was peer reviewing the most prestigious project in the world? And I often smile at myself for that. That's because strategically, I knew that coming up to 2012, if I had a business that had secured the Olympic stadium opportunity, my multiplier of my profits would go up 1 or 2 notches.
Yeah.
And the only way I did that was look to acquire a business that had Olympic stadium experience, albeit it was the Calgary Saddle Dome. I bought a business back in 2004 that did that. So the whole journey went on.
So you planned that 8 years.
Many years early.
A few years in advance. So obviously, there's a few years before 2012 that obviously you were involved in the project, wasn't it?
Yeah, 2004, I bought a business that was on its knees but had the right experience. My business partner, one of my business partners at the time, said, "What have we bought here? Just a load of history." And I went, "That's exactly what we bought." Yeah. They're in debt. I paid off their debt, but they were a world-renowned company, although internally they were in a mess.
Very smart, actually, because I think there's a lot of businesses at the moment where owners are looking to retire, say, that may have a similar sort of history in whatever field, that are either just looking to exit. They might not even be thinking about selling it, but there might be some really big opportunities in the market.
A great engineer doesn't make a great businessman either.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Even though it's very much a stick, because you have to have the sales element.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're great and you're a proper steel.
Yeah.
And you are always steel, so your engineering is top class, but then you can barely speak to another human being, you're going to struggle.
Well, this guy was a great engineer, but he's not a great businessman. Yeah. So I think in back to that question in terms of time freedom, that was achieved for me at that time.
Yeah.
And able to do what you want. So in some ways, people look at me and go, "Well, you work harder now than you ever did." I said, "Well, it depends what work harder is. Sometimes I work more hours." So as we record this today, this week,
we're not stressing you out right now, are we? That's the point.
I don't feel particularly stressed, but I mean, maybe it's coming. I don't know. But yeah, I've been training for 2 days solid in Birmingham, and then recording some of my podcast series for a day, and driven up to see you. But so what have I just done? I've just talked. I've just talked for 4 days. I mean, that's not that difficult, is it? No, not for me anyway. So for me, I'm doing what I want. I really wish, if I look back, someone says, anything you wish you could have done? I said, yes, sing and dance. If I could have actually played the guitar, if I could have been an Ed Sheeran, that would have been great. I love...
Yeah, but you tell jokes. You can't have it all.
No, I don't tell jokes.
You react to the audience really well.
So I don't tell jokes, but I'll engage with the audience.
Observational comedy. Yeah.
Observational comedy, yeah. And I love observational comedy because I feel... So for me, training people solidly, whether it's the 4-day event I talked about or every month for 2 days, is all about entertaining. When you have a room... So on Wednesday, I had a room of 80 of my students, all on their 12-month apprenticeship, all entrepreneurs, demographic probably 40 to 60, most of them in age.
Yeah.
They are difficult people to control.
Yeah.
And so,
but also I think your approach is really good because property development is challenging and stressful. And then you come in with this good sense of humor and good entertainment. I think that relaxes a lot of the people you're training because they get the answers to what they need, but B, it's like, done in an entertaining way, not a really stressful way that development can be.
I think because you've got to engage adults. You see, when you're sending people back to school, for many of my students, I read this morning, just sat in the car waiting to come in to see you guys, a very lovely comment for one of our students who's just finished her 12-month program. And I would say she's probably mid-50s. She probably listened to this, so apologies if I've got that wrong. And she actually described her life being in a complete rut and actually no motivation at all. And we took her out of that and we gave her a challenge. And she just spoke at an event last week in front of 80 people. And she said, it was amazing. And she said, great. I would have not done that 12 months ago. So I think what you have when you're training adults, they're coming back into something. And if I just monotone present to them and just look, they're not going to get it. And so I have to keep them awake.
Yeah, and engaged.
Yeah. I had one of my insurance brokers in the room talking to them about property development insurance this week. And he came up to me afterwards and he said, best property event I ever go to. He said, what I cannot believe is even right up to 5 o'clock, the energy is in the room. Yeah. And I believe if you keep that energy up, they listen and learn.
Yeah, and then
I've got some feedback for you, actually. if you don't mind.
Is this good or bad?
No, it's great. Just on how you're talking and things. So obviously, first and foremost, your financial freedom. You sold your business 7 figures, and then you've launched this behemoth, which is a bit of a monster, becoming a monster, right? Which, like you said, it's 4 days, back-to-back talking, loads of speaking events, training courses, all that kind of stuff. You're working more hours. And when I was one of your early delegates on your 3-day one, right?
The 3-day online.
The 3-day online, right? And you didn't charge me for that. You got £1, I think it was.
Did we not?
No. So it was about £1.
I was going to make a note for my team.
And the invoice. Yeah. And it was at that point when I thought to myself, this guy doesn't actually need the money. He's doing it because he loves it. Because I don't know anybody else that would do maybe a virtual you can download, but this was live.
Yeah.
You were there for 3 days. You didn't charge anyone. I was like, this is different. It goes to show that, like, I talk about this quite a lot. And my message is that actually, as human beings, we're designed to have some level of struggle in our lives. Now, struggle just isn't necessarily positive or negative. It just is. You know, when we were hunter-gatherers for 10,000 years, you know, we were struggling to stay alive, right? So now we lose that, and retirement specifically kills it. So my father lost his purpose when he retired. He had nothing else, lost his faith. He was a very religious man.
So struggle gives you purpose in a way, doesn't it?
Well, struggle with purpose, I think, creates life. That gives you a purpose to live. Struggle without purpose, if you're struggling family, bills, life, and you don't have a purpose, I think that's very slippery slope.
Well, shall I talk to you on that? And because we don't normally talk about this stuff as guys. So everyone often looks at me and goes, oh, you're great. Look at you. You've got everything. And I go, well, it's not always like that. And at that point, about struggle and the lack of purpose, I didn't learn until I had a lump of cash.
Yeah.
And I had a lump of cash. I'm a petrol head, so I bought a stack of cars and lined them all up the drive. I bought a boat. I bought this. I bought a house. I bought swimming pool, cinema rooms. I had it all. And I invested in lots of businesses. And one of the businesses I invested in was a construction company with the guy who built the house for me.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, my wife said, I never trusted that fella. I thought, I wish you'd told me that earlier. And we didn't have similar values, not at all. But we went into business together. My fault, I let him run the business. I tried to step away because I didn't want to be involved in the construction company. I was an investor. And this fella faked a nervous breakdown and did a runner. Cost me £500,000 to put it right, to pay back all the trades. My accountant said, there's carpenters and plumbers, you've got no guarantees with them. I said, that $15,000 is their mortgage. We have to pay that. And he said, you don't have to. I said, no, we do. It's cost me £500,000, paying everyone back, all the deposits, finishing everything off. And I sold it to a friend of mine, the company, for £1, took everything off me. And at the end of that, coincided, interestingly enough, with this is probably deep down one of the reasons I really went into the training and really enjoyed it, was my world sort of fell apart. So I wasn't financially having a problem, but I didn't know what was going on. And so there were arguments at home. My son was particularly bullshit at the time, or probably I was. And my wife said, you need to go and see someone. And actually I did. I went to see the doctor. And he said, what's the problem? I said, I don't know. And then he said, I think you're suffering from depression. Me?
Yeah.
Depression? I'm super successful.
Yeah.
The house, the boat.
I got all, but I was. And actually, I'd fallen into depression. And as a guy, I didn't tell anyone.
Yeah.
For a few years, I did not tell anyone. And I got some help. And he said, come off this medication when you feel right. I picked myself back up. And the reason I did, and you said it there, Phil, and I think I picked up on it, is I had no purpose. I didn't need a purpose. I had money. I had no purpose.
But you didn't realise that you needed a purpose.
No, I didn't realise.
Yeah.
Tim, I didn't realise. I had no purpose, I had no goals, no strategy, nothing. I was drifting along. And all my friends were still working. I said, come out on the boat. It's a lovely day. We still got a business to run, mate. And so I very quickly found that then I had no purpose in life.
Well, your struggle at the time is filling your days.
It was.
Which is a ridiculous struggle. People will listen to that and go, surely that's not a struggle.
I was nuts.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
It absolutely is.
It was nuts. It was absolutely nuts. Yeah, it was weird. And I ended up in not a great place. I wouldn't say it was dark, but it wasn't a great place. And so I had to pull out of that. And my family, my wife helped me do that. And Property CEO, I think, helped me then connect with an audience and help other people. And I think something we all have in us is this desire to help others, whether it's our children, whether it's our elderly parents or friends. I have a great connection with people that you help, and I almost love it when someone doesn't want me to train them, but I've helped them. So I can speak on stage at an audience, and sometimes people come up and go, tell me about your mentorship program. I'd love to get on board. I mean, that's lovely. Yeah. But the ones I prefer, or perhaps get the most from, someone comes up to me and go, I love what you said. I've perhaps got no interest in what you're talking about in training, but I really think you've just changed my life today. And they walk off. And you go, wow. And I think that's something
you say to them, just imagine if you came and did my 12-month course.
But you see, but you don't. So that never even crosses your mind. And I think the thing that I find is I'm pretty straight talking, as we said earlier. And my business partner, Ian, sometimes he's like this. Oh, God, you didn't just say that. I say how it is.
Yeah.
I say how it is. So, I've drilled down with students and I'm trying to find their purpose, because I didn't have a purpose. Now my purpose is to help people change their lives.
Yeah.
So I've been pretty successful, and I meet people coming in and then I go, so why do you want to do this? I had a guy once and I said, but why? And you need to know why, because if you don't know why, we just said this construction industry is tough.
Yeah.
And because it's tough, if you don't know why, that won't pull you through.
You got to push through, don't you, when there's challenges?
I say there's two things. There's either a saber-toothed tiger snapping at your rear end, in which case that's pushing you forward, or there's a goal that pulls you forward. So some people, I've got one of my students I interviewed recently, a lad from Birmingham. His goal is to end child poverty.
Wow, yeah.
That's phenomenal. And some people go, really? But he would probably he's going for it, and he's, I don't need the money. So it's pulling him forward. But this guy in particular, I said,
I love that, by the way. Just before, carry on. Sorry,
No, you love it. Go on.
No, I love the fact that you've either got the saber-toothed tiger snapping at heels, or you've got something pulling you forwards. And that, again, is something that people don't recognise, because they mix those two things up. And I say it all the time, which is if you're doing something, recognise where you are. So if you need to pay your bills, and you hate what you do, it's making you ill, and you're trying to replace that salary, your why is that.
Yeah.
Right? That is your why right here, right now. Don't change the world as well.
Yeah.
Put your own seatbelt on first.
Yeah.
In the aeroplane, you put your own oxygen mask on, and then you change the world. And I talk about it in my talks, which is, if I didn't have the cash flow around me now, I couldn't do any of the things that I wanted to do, right? So if I didn't have the businesses that we have now, I couldn't do any of the things that I wanted to do.
We wouldn't be sat here today, would we?
No, we wouldn't. I'd be sat at a desk. I'd be managing recruitment consultants who telling me why they can't make 10 phone calls in a morning. That's what we would be. That's what we were doing. So it's a bit like, I love that. So you're just recognizing that as well is so important. It's
I think it is.
And put yourself in that. That's your purpose right now, because that's your why. So your purpose is to get out of that. But then when you achieve potentially that purpose, have another look at a new why to pull you forward.
Well, mine's pulling forward.
It should be reviewed. And that's the thing.
Review and strategize every 12 months. Because it does change year to year.
This guy I've spoken to, just to finish this bit, this guy, I said, why are you doing it? And I drilled down, and he said something about his father, and his father passed. And I listened and I said, are you doing this for your father? And he went quiet, and he said, I think I am. I said, what did you say to your father when he passed? And it's like, well, you never asked. And he said, I told him that I would go and be successful. And the story was behind this, that his father never achieved much in his life. And his father left him some money and said, go and do this, son. Go and be the successful one from our family, because no one in our family has ever been successful. And he said, why have I just told you that? He said, I've not even told my wife that. How have I told you that? And that, even now, I'm sitting there, that gets the hairs on the back of your neck thinking, that
probably because you asked the question.
I love that ability to bring that out of people, for them to realise it and then to go on. And I think for me, that's where I found that purpose and that direction. And so to drive up to Birmingham and spend days with people, and I'm always apprehensive. It's interesting, people say, oh, you love it. I said, yeah, but I'm always apprehensive that I'm going to serve you well. You're here, you've paid a lot of money to be here, and I want to make sure I serve you. So you're always apprehensive.
And you want to see results, don't you? I
want to see results. I want to see them doing stuff. And even some people don't do it.
Yeah.
But they've got a result. Some people I will say have gone on a program and then they never develop, and they go, do you know, I've decided not to, but what you have done is now found me another purpose in life. So yeah, I think that purpose thing is so powerful. So
Yeah, 100%.
Stop the podcast now. This episode is sponsored by Property Filter. Property Filter is the #1 property tool for today's property professional. It brings in all the data points and sources from all the property portals and auction sites into one convenient place. Then you have the option to overlay all the clever strategies found in the Property Filter blueprint to find motivated sellers faster. Now, we use it on a daily basis. It saves us over 80% of our time when looking for properties. And if that sounds like something that you want in your lives, please go to register.property-filter.co.uk/PPB, which is the discount code for this podcast. You will get 2 weeks free and a discount on your first month. That's it from me. Back to the podcast.
Right. So on that note, so small scale development is your niche basically. So what do you think are the current opportunities in the market, early 2025? And why should some of our listeners get involved in small scale property development this year?
So the opportunity, well, let's define small scale development in my definition.
Yep.
My definition of small scale development is between 5 and 20 units, houses or flats. And the reason I say that, below 5 is where your local builders will play, and they will often look at a project not on the same financial basis, not look for profit on GDV, they'll look for profit on construction costs. You can't compete with them. Above 20 is often where your regional players are, not the Barratts, Persimmon, Bellways, and you can't compete with them.
Yeah, your bigger contractors are involved and all those sort of things.
And so the
Bigger
5 to 20 is a sweet spot. And of course, you don't make your profit till you sell. So it's that keeping it small and only stick with small. And the thing is well, within that space, right now, 2022, there was a study done, so there's probably even more now, and there was 1.2 million homes. A countryside charity did this study that could be built out of brownfield land.
Yeah.
1.2 million homes. And so there's a huge amount of homes, and most of those sites are 25 to 30 average, which means there's a lot smaller. So these are empty banks, offices, retail units, etc., around the country. And then if we think about the timing of those, they're empty. And we're all, if anyone's listening to this, they will be now picturing probably that empty shop or that empty bank down the road. Yeah, I've seen that. And I bet they have.
Yeah, or the vacancies above those shops as well.
Walk down the street and look up. They're all empty. And think about those landlords that own those properties. Are they motivated? They probably are. So we have a motivated landlord who's got an empty commercial building in a commercial environment where the world has now changed. The world has now changed since COVID. It really forced us down a road, which we were going down anyway. Yeah. And so we don't shop. And the whole redevelopment of this country back in the 50s and 60s into towns and shopping centres and precincts was false. It wasn't how humans operate. You've only got to go over to the continent and look at live, work and little villages. That's how it survives. What we created in the 50s and 60s after the war were places that at night became ghettos. And so it'll all change. It will transform and it will go back. And so we're on the start of that massive journey. And I've been talking about this for years prior to COVID. We're on the start of that journey. So that's accelerating. So what we have is an abundance of stock. So for any business, to get into any business, you want an abundance of the raw material for that business. So if I was going to sit here and say, hey, why don't you get into land development? No, there's not an abundance of land within this country.
Absolutely not.
Every single plot, loads of people are chasing and they think that's the panacea, that's where it's at. But there is an abundance of stock. Landowners are not motivated. Commercial owners of empty, disused, rundown urban buildings are highly motivated. So we've got stock at the right price being pushed. So there's one thing. So if we analyze our business model, that's powerful. If we then think of, let's go to the back end, and then we'll come towards the middle. The back end says, can we sell the product that we make? So if I was going to go into the marketplace and make a new iPhone or a new mobile phone, there's huge competition and it's unlikely I'm going to make one. I'm not going to. But homes in this country, forget politics, but we're supposed to deliver 300,000 a year. So that's what the Conservatives said. We never do. So we're 450,000 short. So 150,000 last year, and the year before we probably need to deliver 5, 6, 7, 800,000 a year. So build in the right place, location, and you will sell your product. So it's unlike an HMO where there is saturation in certain areas. You'll sell your product. You got the raw material. Then in the middle, what we're looking for is a business model. Anyone wants to look for a business model that's got no real cash flow issues. So the fact that on a development, you borrow the money and the money is substantially rolled up in terms of interest you pay at the back end. So it's a nice cash flow model. Then we're looking for less taxation. Well, as a business model, because you can run it through a group holding structure and you can move money around, is tax efficient. Then we want to look for a business model that's got less legislation, or even better, supported by the government. Well, the government and previous governments are not political, are taxing the hell out of landlords, whether that be buy-to-let, HMO, service departments, legislation. I think it's going to get worse. You can manage it, sure, so it doesn't make them unviable, but 360 degrees on that, turn right the way around, you actually find that the government is supporting property developers, and they support that with permitted development rights, which short circuits the planning system. So the government are actively supporting, through legislation, development. The money is there. I was speaking to a funder at the back end of last year who said the funding appetite is not changing, but it's moving towards short-term finance. There are more and more people getting in the short-term finance space, which is the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 year space, which is development funding, because they get in, they get out, they get in, they get out. Rather than locking into long-term investment type products. So not the investment products aren't there, but there's a lot of people shifting into this development space. So what we have is a huge momentum going into that space of raw material, all the legislation, tax, which is supporting it, the government supporting it, and we can sell out the back end.
And actually, there's not a lot of what you call small-scale developers actually in the market. So would you say there's a lack of competition? Because, there's not a huge amount of people doing these sort of developments.
Well, there's less competition than there is in standard investment type products, buy-to-lets, HMOs, definitely. It's harder to get into it. That puts the competition out. The point I make about less competition, it's not that, in my opinion, there's not people in it. It's that the demand is so huge.
Yeah.
I'm the biggest, or propertyCEO is the biggest player in this market space, okay, by quite a way. There are other people that train in this space, but we're the biggest. And we'd have to multiply our business by at least 30 times a year to fulfill the demand in the space.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so that's where the lack of competition comes, is we need more and more homes so we can put people in.
Yeah, there's a huge undersupply, isn't it? These sort of.
And then when I bring it all back, goes back to your question about financial freedom, the other reason why I would say people consider getting into this space, okay, yield lumps of cash. We talked about cash flow and those sort of thing, but it's time. Because the way I teach this business model, it's not hands-on. Because I think that's dangerous. The way I teach it is to be the CEO, the property CEO of a business. And whilst that can be almost a little bit, oh my God, I'm not a CEO. Well, you are. You just don't think of it too highfalutin. You could be the CEO and you're just running a business and you're hands off. So the model actually gives you time and money as well.
And that's one of the things I took away as well, was from doing the days, and obviously seeing you speak on the circuit and things like that, and knowing some of your students, is the first thing you actually say to people is, you need a non-executive who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The only trainer that does that, by the way.
Yeah.
You're the only trainer.
Listen,
I can teach you this stuff, but if this is your first time, you need a non-executive. You're doing some non-exec work.
I am, yeah. I'm doing a project for one of your students.
Are you?
Non-exec.
Yeah.
So, it's an example of you saying that's what you need to do. The student.
Someone's come to you.
And found me, yeah.
Crazy student. Whoever you are.
No one's got to me. What are you doing?
So well done. That's great.
Yeah. But I just thought that was absolutely the right thing to do, because that person who's been through it 40 times, 19 to fruition in the last 5 years, is going to save
hundreds of building projects
over the 20 years. Is going to save you huge amounts of time, effort, money, resource, massively.
And they add gravitas. So I unfortunately got a student at the moment who's having some trouble, and there are a few people in the marketplace, and this construction world, property development world, is quite a tough world because there's lots of money and there's a lot of unscrupulous people. And she's having a bit of a tough time with some people out there. And one of the things I say people that these non-execs give you is gravitas. So if you've got someone like Tim on your side, you don't quite fit my bill, because I always say grey hair or no hair. So
that's what they said. Actually, they said Ritchie does say older, but we like you because you're doing it at the moment. So you've
now got what you call a high and tight, which is you keep your hair cut really short, to hide what's now coming through.
There are a few greys in here. There are
because you're blonde as well. It's harder to see.
There's definitely some greys. It's all good.
So I that non-exec alongside you adds that gravitas to you. And you're right, it is a unique role. And people ask me to be their non-exec all the time. And actually, when we started this business, my accountant said, wow. He said, you're going to be everyone's non-exec. You can take a cut of all their... Well, my word. I went, no, I'm not interested in that. And again, it's about not doing it for the money. I said, that's not the right answer. And students say, I heard a student this week, he said, I know you're going to say no, but how much for you to be my non-exec? I said, no. He said, no, but come on, let's do a deal. I said, no. And I said, I'm not...
I love that he's trying, though.
I love a try. God loves a try. So I
Not
said,
the best negotiator, though, because you could have just named your price or whatever.
but no, because... It's just, and the reason I said no, I said the bottom line is, so this particular student I said has got a few problems. And she'd asked me to be an honest. I said, the bottom line is I am still, if you like, your non-exec. I'm still there as a mentor. And I'm completely independent. I've got no financial interest in your project at all, whether it's a profit share or whatever. I'm just here to give you advice. And so you can always ring me. You can always come into my community, because the community is a strong community. You can come into that community and I will advise you. So you have another layer above your non-exec. So whoever's using Tim, if Tim messes around, he doesn't give the right answer, they come to me and I'll say, well, that's Tim for you. That's Tim for you. But they have another layer above you.
They can still...
that's why I don't
They've still got the extra support outside of it.
That role is hugely important. Hugely important.
Yeah, because it's a classic one we see. So we do operate in that 5 to 20 space of flats that you're talking about. We also do slightly smaller with the HMO conversions. But the classic one we see all the time is people just say, oh, can you recommend a builder? And it's like, hang on. What about the rest of the team? Like, just to start with, you should be looking at a project manager, a quantity surveyor, as a just a starter, because
pre-construction is where it's at.
Who's gonna manage all the consultants? Who's gonna do the tender pack? Who's gonna do the detailed scope of works, the cost plan, negotiate the contract, get all the builder quotes and assess them, etc., meet building control, challenge building control, all those sort of things. And if you don't employ a project manager or QS, you as a property developer have to do all those things if you want a successful project.
And you'll do it badly. And here's an interesting thing. We talk about other people in the space. There is still someone who still operates in this space. And a couple of our students had a problem with their project. And get this, the contractor had said to them that the contractor doesn't like the project manager. Well, there's a surprise, okay? Because the project manager wasn't giving them an extension time or letting them do what they want. So the contractor basically said to the developer, "Get rid of your project manager." They asked me, and I went, "No, absolutely no way. This is great that they don't like your project manager, and you just got to get the relationships working." But they actually then, someone else within the training space gave them advice to remove the project manager and project manage it yourself.
Oh no!
And they did. And it went badly wrong, okay? And then I said to them, I said, "You've done what?" And they went, "Yeah, well, we were given that advice by so-and-so, who is quite out there in training people, okay, in the development space." And I said, "So this individual gave you that advice?" They went, "Yeah, absolutely." I said, "You do realise that what he's advised you to do is in breach of your JCT contract?" I said, "This is where your contractor will now completely shaft you, because you're in breach of JCT contract because you haven't got the permission, you haven't changed your project manager."
And they went, they would be nominated as either the employer's agent or the contract administrator, depending on the contract. But at JCT, they're the people that are in the contract.
I'm going to say it right here, right now. Do not manage your own project. Now I'm going to repeat it. Do not manage your own project. If you are an investor, do not manage your own project. I'm going to say it one more time for the hard of hearing. Do not manage your own project.
So you're suggesting don't manage your own project?
Just.
I'm going to agree. What would you say? Don't manage your own project?
Don't manage your own project.
There we go.
Engage the experts. But we could talk loads more about this. But anyway, what I do want to know is some of the common challenges that you see sort of new property developers, some of your students, inexperienced property developers, when they first enter that sort of space or that industry.
The most common challenge is because of the demographic of the people that come in.
Yeah.
And they're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And entrepreneurs don't listen. So the biggest challenge is listening. That is the biggest challenge, because I can say to some of my students, go out the door and turn left. And they go out the door. I go, where you gone? You turn right. Well, I just thought right was better. And that does come back to that manage your own project. So people get in to things. And it's like this space with funders. There are some, because the funding arena is largely unregulated for development funding.
Yes.
And I don't recommend anyone. I never recommend, but I say I bring people in the room. So the people I bring in the room, I trust that they will look after you. Are they cheapest? Probably not. So
you're saying like brokers and people like that?
Brokers, yeah. And the same with consultants. And so I say, not all architects are the same. So you don't have to use the architects I have in the room, but ask the architect in the room what they think of your architect. And people don't. They think they know best. So they go off and they find a broker who gives them a funder who doesn't serve them well.
Yeah. Who
screws them at the back end of the deal. So I think the biggest challenge is listening. Yeah. That's the biggest challenge. And I would be exactly the same. I'm an entrepreneur. You tell me to do something, I sort of think I probably know how to do it. And so I do shout at my students in the room. I go off on a rant. And I do that, and I will shout and swear sometimes. And my business partner says, you can do it, but don't shout and swear. I said, well, sometimes he said, some people don't like it. I said, well, then you just don't come to me. Because if I have to drop an F-bomb, it's not because I just want to be potty mouth. It's I am just trying to get something across to you, and I want you to listen. And so I do go off on a rant, so I think that's the biggest challenge. The second challenge, I think, is that because this is a new arena for them, it's amazing how wonderfully educated, super successful people in other businesses suddenly then go, it's quite difficult. I don't want to go out and talk to people. And so their big challenge then is they believe that they can be a property developer from behind a laptop, which you cannot. Okay,
instead of actually getting out there and building relationships. Yeah.
So that is a big challenge, and you have to get them over that. And so, when we're looking for deals, 50% of the development deals, those deals I've talked about that are out there, do not come to the market. And they're with agents, and you've got to build relationships with agents because agents are lazy. And if you're listening, you are. So that's the reality. So you've got to go and build those relationships. So that's their.
I love agents. Please bring me your deals. We're not.
No, but they are lazy. This is the whole point. They are lazy, and a lot of my good friends are agents. So what you've got to do is.
Well, they don't want to waste their time. Is that a way you do it?
No, they're lazy. No.
Lazy people are great because they find the easiest route to market, right?
Yeah, of course they are. You're trying to be politically correct, you two guys. I mean,
they just want to.
Don't be entertained.
What would they rather do? Would they rather talk to you, get the deal done, or do 30 viewings with people that are going to
They'd rather talk to you over lunch or a nice evening glass of wine and get a deal done.
Yeah.
So they like to go out and do stuff.
Yeah.
So they're lazy because they don't need to do this stuff.
They don't want to do viewings at 6 o'clock at night instead of going to the city game or something like that.
What are they interested in? They're interested in two things. Price, but fundamentally getting the deal done.
Yeah.
So I think coming out...
Yeah, trust and reliability is massive. We talk about all the time. Is like... Once you just do what you say you're going to do, the agent is very happy to come back to you with more deals, aren't they?
I think that's the big thing. I think then the third thing, if I had to home in on a third, I'm gonna pinch 3A and 3B,
right?
Because I'm in the hot seat here, so I can do that. But I sort of think procrastination is one. So I had a guy this week, I was so sad. So behind him was a lady who'd just done a presentation. She was a little pocket rocket. If she's listened to this, she'll know who she is. She'd done a presentation. She'd been with us 6 months. She's got 2 deals looking at 1.3 million profit coming out the back end. She's on fire. Yeah. We looked at a deal in the room with her, talked about this deal. We said, that's a good deal. So we've got all the professional team there. She nipped out in the coffee break, put a bid in, won the deal. Okay.
Nice. Perfect.
Nailed it. Now, she had done all her numbers and stuff beforehand, so she wasn't a maverick, but she'd done that. Another guy, and he'll know if he's listening to this, lovely guy, engineer, had looked at a project, bought a project, which we assessed in the room this week. All of his data, his spreadsheets, his heat maps, everything. I said, that's great. Put an offer in. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Go on then. Yeah, I will. And then in the afternoon, he went, someone's taken it. Well, there you are. How long ago were you doing those heat maps? And I've done it over the last week or two.
You got to move quick, don't you? At certain times, you just really have to move quick in those scenarios.
So that's my 3A. And my 3B, which is the biggest challenge, but when they get it, it just totally clicks in. It's the property CEO. It's being the CEO. And I think that's when they get that, because people feel that, hang on, I'm in this space. I've got no right to be in this space. Who's going to take me seriously? Well, you don't need to know everything. You're the CEO. And when they click on that CEO, and hence why that was the name of the company, when they click on that, and I think we're the only people that teach this CEO approach, which was all about minimizing risk, then they get it.
Yeah.
Then they're successful.
And do you know, it's funny because I go back again to the hire the expert. You need your non-executive, and the power. Like I go back again to that because it's the power that you teach on that part. Because it's a bit like you said, people don't listen, right? So you say to them, okay, so you need to hire an executive. I don't need one. I'm an entrepreneur. I don't need one. Okay. Who's your first consultant? Well, I'll probably project manage it myself. So you're not having an expert and no project manager. Okay. Who's your first consultant you're going to hire then? Architect. Right. What kind?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean? What kind of architect? Oh, I know this guy. He's a technologist.
Yeah.
Not an architect. This is to get the funding, you're going to need an architect. Oh, well, what does that mean? Well, I'm not going to tell you because you need the expert and you need and then is that when does your pre-construction activity start? Here. What about the legal scenario? Yeah. What offer are you going to put in? And are you going to offer an exchange? You're going to delay completion for planning. In that exchange, are you going to put the terms and conditions into the exchange that suit you? Maybe even get out of jail clauses if needed. If you don't get whatever you need to meet your criteria. Oh, I don't know. Maybe hire the non-executive at this point. And then it's like, because they will, like the front end, it's all about the front end. It's all about getting the deal done at the front end with the terms that suit that are going to make you your profit. Everything else is noise.
It's just
everything else.
The
is
non-exec,
noise.
it's just that sounding board as well. Yeah, so when you're going through things and like, because there's two scenarios I'm gonna lay out for you in projects of what I think happens on the 5 to 20 flat space. One is completely underdone team, as in not enough professionals. Everything's done too cheap. You know, the builder's too cheap, not the right builder. You know, and it's a major problem. Even though the numbers look good, it turns into catastrophe. The other flip side is you get a really good professional team. You get everyone on board. Some of these professionals, it might be like the lower end of what they do. So they end up being quite pricey. What the building contractors you get on board is like, they're a really good building contract. They can do it, but that's the low end of what they do. And then suddenly it's way too expensive. So you get one extreme to the other. So
they're
really,
not interested because they've got 3 other projects which are much bigger and much more profitable.
Yeah. So if you took an example around here in Manchester, like a McGough or someone, like they do big projects. They do say they do small stuff, but they're going to be way too pricey for these sort of things because their overheads are too high and all the contractors they use, etc. So my question is, how do you get into that middle niche that you get a really good professional team that's set up for your type of project that's going to be profitable? You're not too expensive and you're not underdone. How do you work your students into that middle niche ground?
A lot of this comes back to the whole process of how we teach, and how I teach is about who, not how. That great book, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and that is in Dan Sullivan. Who, not how. So who do I need to answer that question, not how do I do it? And so in terms of who can help me with that, as opposed to how do I do that, that's where your non-exec can come in. So if you actually find yourself a non-exec advisor in the way that we described, they can help guide you into that space. Then there's some criteria that we teach around that. So when we talk about contractors, for instance, we talk about contractors, not builders. So here's a great test. If the individual turns up to quote and they turn up after 6 o'clock and they're in a van, that's not a contractor. I'm looking for a contractor that turns up in a car, probably in the middle of the day, and has an office and a buyer and a secretary and so on and so forth. So that's a contractor. And then we look at it in terms of percentages. So we're doing, because numbers is key to everything one does. So what I often say to people is what you want to look at. We have a strategy. This is all laid out of how people look into it. And back
it's your 8 pillars, right? Your 8 pillars strategy.
We have a framework. Well, the framework that we teach around is called 8 pillars. And it's a framework that I developed and refined over 40 years.
It's super, I have to say. Really well set out.
You follow the framework. And that's where the framework is. I'll teach you some modules on pillar 1. Come and ask some questions of me. We'll mentor you and get the coaches. I teach you some modules on pillar 2 and so on. And so within those pillars, within that framework, the framework breaks down into lots of other sub-frameworks and so on. And one of those sub-frameworks is about contractors. And it is then about the percentage. So if you're looking at a contractor and you have a £200,000 construction project, well, we want to have that probably about 20 to 25% of a contractor's turnover in that year. So you're when you pick up the phone to them, they go, "Hi, how you doing, Richie? Good. Other than, sorry, you are which project? I'm not sure who's dealing with you. You are significant to them. You don't want to be 50% of their turnover because you're too significant to them. And so should there be a delay, they've now got cash flow problems. And so there are lots of checks and measures done around that. That's just two sort of criteria. And we get a project manager to do that. You get your project manager to assess and your accountant to assess, because what we need to check is they're telling the truth. So your project manager have a whole series of questions, which we lay out for you to get your project manager to ask, but most project managers know how to ask this stuff anyway. And it's not just what I've got on now, is what actually you're projecting. Where are you projecting your business to go over the next year, and what have you already secured?
Yeah, roughly what percentage would be from this project. Yeah,
but what's secured as well, and I want to identify that. And then the accountant will do another check to back it up. We get your property accountant to do a check on their accounts to see where they're at. The contractors that are dangerous are those contractors that went from, $500,000 turnover to 3 million turnover, because their trade accounts and their cash flow does not match it. And that's where you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and they've had to grow a labour force there that they probably don't even know and trust in that short
You've got
time.
it, yeah. So there are checks and measures that you can do. And that's all part of the 8-pillar framework. The framework that you follow goes through that process.
I think that is a really good one for our listeners to think about. So if it's a contractor that's, say, 50% of their turnover, too much, too dependent, stay away from them. If it's someone that's like a 5%, it's like you're not important, it's too little. So that you're saying like 20-25%.
20-25%, I think is about right.
Yeah,
I think it's about right. You're really important to them, and it's a bread and butter.
It's a really good way to put it, actually. It really is.
And that's part of the framework. But the thing is, this is back to that who, not how. That's why I mentioned that, is that what we said, that's what you need to know. So you're a CEO. So as a CEO, this is why I want you to have time as well, because no point making money without time. So as a CEO, I'm going to get someone else to do that. So you need to know what's got to be done and then tell them to do it. So all of my CEOs have got to do, my students, is be the CEO, get your project manager, This is what I've been told. Yeah. And the most project managers will go, yeah, that's exactly what I do. Now, some of them might go, oh, that's an interesting criteria that Property CEO has given you, that Ritchie's dictated. Yeah, I'll adopt some of that. And they probably got their own questions. And their accountant, if it's a property accountant, it's about the same. I emphasize that because not all architects, not all accountants are equal. Good property accountants are probably used to looking through those accounts and seeing what's going on. And so all those checks and measures are important. The other big check and measure around all of this is a thing I call social capital. Okay. And so social capital was not what I call. Social capital is something that is measured. You can measure, all of us can measure our social capital. So you said earlier, yeah, I heard you speak. I've seen you on this stage. Some people might listen to this podcast, never seen me before. They might say, oh, I watched that podcast and I saw a guy called Ritchie Clapson. Someone might go, oh yeah, I know him.
Yeah.
And then someone else goes, oh yeah, I know him. I've seen him. He does this. And a friend of mine's working.
I read your book as well. You got out.
My first book, my second book. So, hey, but you're on the who, not how.
Two have you? I've 3. Three now.
And guess what? Guess who wrote them?
Somebody else.
There'll be someone.
Yeah, because it's who, not how.
Yeah.
You're not exactly. You're executive assistant or something.
My business partner.
Yeah.
So he's a writer. He's a writer. Right. I mean, he can't write a property book because he's not a property guy. But to take the who, not how to the extreme, when we wrote our small scale property development, the definitive book on small scale development, we sat for hours, and I would describe and talk, and he would make notes and record, and he put a book together. He put a book together so well. This is the class of a writer, of a great writer. So he's got many skills, writing being one of them. I sent it to my mentor, really, is my old business partner, Stuart, a guy from Sheffield. I've known him for years, lovely bloke. He tells me how it is and tells me what to do and tells me to stop doing stuff. Yeah. And I just blindly sent Stuart a copy of my first book. And then a couple of weeks later, he rang me up. He went, hello, mate. I mean, you're right. I cannot bloomin' believe it. He didn't say bloomin', he said something else. I said, what? He said, you have written a book. Clapson's written a book. He said, I knew you had a book in you, but I never knew you'd sit down and write a book. Your attention span doesn't do it. I said, do you think I wrote that? He said, I know you wrote that. And he's known me about 25 years. I said, why? He said, it's you all over. I said, Ian wrote it. He went, no way. Mm-hmm. He said that is so skillful. He said, he's written that in a way,
in your words, but without you writing it,
which is super powerful. But that's the who, not how, to that extreme. So I think all of that, and I went off a tangent now, I can't remember what we were talking about, but I think we were talking about contractors and things. Yes, social capital, that's what it was, you see. My memory's still...
You went to social capital, that wasn't our question.
I know. But
we'll bring you back in a minute, mate.
I know, well, you're going to attempt to, I know that, but that's absolutely fine. But the social capital thing, I think, is really important, massively important with all of these things, is if that contractor is in your social capital in your area. So if I screw up with a student, will that get around quite quickly?
Of course.
And will my reputation be marred? Yeah. So if you're working with a contractor and that contractor knows lots of other people and you know other people, it doesn't have to be property related, they don't want to screw up because their reputation's marred. So it's social capital, social arenas are super valuable more than any contract.
And it's dangerous if your contractor doesn't care.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they don't have any value in social capital, it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Although we have some really good contractors that wouldn't even know how to use social media at all.
No, but at the same time, their social capital is great because people that have done jobs with them will talk about how great
it's their network of
social capital is not social network. It's actually social capital. You can Google the stuff, you can measure it stuff. It's just your presence within society and who knows who.
Well, it's a prime example with us because even though we contract contractors and we manage them and oversee them, the importance of delivering the overall package and it being successful for us and our clients is like unbelievably important. Like that is our reputation and everything we go about is to make sure that
and we suffer the same burdens as everyone else. You know, contractors do overrun. They some of them don't perform as well as they did on their last job and things like that. And you know, it's you've got to stand there and take it sometimes and actually work with the client. You know,
well, it's complicated, isn't it? I mean, you think of all these people that we have pulled together that try and build our projects. I mean, we're very antiquated in the way we develop across the world in lots of ways. I mean, we don't really embrace modular in this country for lots of financial reasons. But, you know, pulling together all these people.
Although it is happening because my last project working was a massive modular building, 35 stories high.
But I've been around so long. I think the biggest problem in this country with modular is transport costs. And
land availability.
Let's not go into modular building, guys.
Yeah, modular
I can
building.
see where you're going.
Sorry.
I can see
it's
where you're
your
going.
podcast.
Let's bring it back. Let's bring it back.
I don't mind talking about modular if you want. We can talk about modular, volumetric, transport costs. Okay, back to you.
So to bring you back, so we talked a lot about your challenges earlier, but so on this podcast, we just want to talk about, you know, big successes. What are you most proud of? And then also what are some of the biggest challenges and failures you've had across your journey of what you classify as financial freedom or in your training company post?
Okay, can I end on the high and do the failures and the things that perhaps, you know, you're
Dealer's
not,
choice.
I think, so I suppose that if I look back, I probably my initial reaction was, not being in a very good place and losing purpose and traction. But actually, in a way, that's probably not, because it's got me to where I've got to. So I'd never be doing this.
So it's a challenge, but it pushed you where you are.
Yeah, if that hadn't happened. But that was a challenge.
But I do think that most challenges and failures are the same, that push you in the direction of where you want to end up or where you get to.
You become relentless in certain areas.
But I think if I look back, I suppose the biggest regret with that is I had to recover that business, the construction business, and 2016 was gone. So I lost £500,000. I'm not being glib, but that wasn't a biggie. You can get that back, but I couldn't get 2016 back. And I think that was probably a big regret, that there's probably a lot that went on in that year that I missed.
Yeah.
And so that's a big regret. There's time there.
Yeah, family life and everything.
Yeah, family life. Yeah, where you think, okay, I missed stuff there.
And you probably weren't present. You know,
I definitely wasn't present.
Yeah, even when you're there mentally, you're like
you're somewhere else. I've been through it.
You're a zombie basically at the dinner table or whatever.
That's your biggest regret. I think the successes. I think interesting successes. So we have some challenges within the family with my children with neurodiversity. That's been a massive journey. So completely unrelated to property, but that's been a massive journey. My son, as I said, is a chartered civil engineer, or incorporated civil engineer. So he works for an environment agency, done very, very well. But we've had challenges. You know, he had a mental breakdown some years ago. So that was a big, big challenge. And my daughter, and I love this, is my daughter's my events manager. And she's got the job because she's blooming good at it. And she remembers 80 people walked in the room on Wednesday. We had 50 people the day before, and she'll know all their names as they come in. And she just makes them feel
Amazing,
welcome.
yeah.
And the event runs like clockwork. And she has challenges. So she has health challenges. She has some university challenges. And so those are some of my biggest wins that my two children have really forged their way forward in life. They're little fighters in what they've done. My other big win with it is those students that you inspire.
Yeah.
And having built a business that makes people financially very, very wealthy, and we've got some great success stories, I think beyond that, it's those people, those journeys, the message that I read, sat in the car before I did this podcast, and even the day before I had one of those students that message in and just say, "You've changed my life."
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, that's great.
And to have changed someone's life even one little bit, I mean, I'm not a religious by any sense of the imagination, but to do that is hugely powerful. So you can pay me any money you like. You can offer me millions and millions of pounds for my business, but for someone to come up and just say, "You've just changed my life."
Yeah.
For me, that's the biggest win. And I'm privileged enough to have those types of comments because of the business model we've created and the way we serve our students. I get those wins.
And
It's such a common thing though, that when somebody's like we go back to the saber-toothed tiger versus the pulling it forwards, when you've no longer got that saber-toothed tiger snapping at your heels, that purpose part, and with that then becomes your success. It's not about the tangible. You're no longer in that tangible, I need to pay for, the government's life that they've created for us, because that's effectively what we all live. That's paid for because I've sorted that. Now it's about the intangible benefits, and that's what success looks like. I love that.
And unprompted as well. So if you're getting that message unprompted, that is amazing. Because I mean,
if I don't get it, I have to ask.
Because we seek our clients for a net promoter score, basically. Top is 10, etc. And it is great when we get 10, but we seek it out, don't we? But it's just a great feeling when you get.
We had somebody.
You got a 10 that's been really successful.
Somebody attend the PIN event that we run. Obviously, you've spoke it a couple of times. Thank you. And he came yesterday and he'd listened to the podcast.
I'd done our Discovery Day last week, didn't he?
Attended a Discovery Day, and he was coming to PIN, and he's completely changed his philosophy on how he's going to move forwards, to the point where he's now finding great deals.
He was ringing for a deal yesterday, actually.
He was going through it. I was like,
in Manchester.
That sounds great. That's a great deal. And he says, "Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to do it without your podcast." I was like, whatever we've spent to get this online,
that is good. Yeah,
that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. That one person. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. No, that was really good. So, bits of advice then. So, any people that are looking to get started in property development, what's like 3 top bits of advice you could give them right now? Does that relate back to your challenges that you mentioned before?
3 top bits of advice. No, I think if anyone sat there listening to this and think, "I want to get into property development," number 1 is find your true purpose of why you're doing it. So we've talked about that thing.
Why.
Push, you're not pulling. Understand that, because you'll need that. I think, secondly, you would say it, wouldn't you? But get educated. I don't care whether you get educated with me, but get educated with someone that is reputable, has good social capital, and has been in this industry for more than a few minutes. Okay, they've got to have been in this industry a long time. So get educated, because you could make £200,000 or £300,000 a year comfortably, and that would change your life. But if you lost it, that could change your life for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
So get educated. I think the third thing with that is, if you want to make money, think about how you want to make that money. And it goes back, it sort of links with the purpose, and think about how you're going to set this business model up. And for me, the CEO business model and small scale development can earn you enough money and give you that time balance alongside it, and minimizes that risk, so you're not getting involved. So approach your business from a business perspective. And one of the challenges for a lot of people that will listen to this, they've never been taught how to run a business. So fundamentally, I teach all of the technical property stuff. I teach all of the mindset branding stuff, but I also teach you how to run a business. And I think that's the thing. So come into this, approach this business on a basis of, okay, I'm going to start with my business on the basis that I want time and I want to do what I want, and the who, not how process. Then if you take that approach, not only will you have the time to enjoy the fruits of your labor, but equally you'll minimize your risk. So those would be my 3 tips.
Lovely.
Excellent.
Lovely.
Great. Yeah. And we ask you to bring a question for us
you can ask us a question.
just to end the podcast.
Okay, so we're talking about property development.
Sure.
So question to you, Phil, first.
Okay.
What would you say to someone then? So you've asked me that question. I'm going to reverse that straight back around. Someone who's listening to this and they're thinking about property development. They like the idea of the lumps of cash. Maybe they've got the cash flows we've talked about. What would your one tip be of what they do to enter the space?
To enter the space, so brand new. So we're talking about somebody who's got a bit of money. Probably, so it's your
May have money, may not have money, but they might have cash flow.
but they've got cash flow. So we're not looking. So we're looking at the development space.
So we're not looking at all. Well, I'm just trying to take out the alternative. Should I do buy to let? Should I do this?
Yeah.
No, I want to be a developer.
Yeah.
I love the idea of development. They maybe just literally, they might have just listened to this podcast. They could be a business person and they're going, I want to be a developer. What one thing would you say to them?
Hire a non-exec
Love it. Yeah.
who does exactly what you're trying to do and has done it really, really well and is happy to spend your time. And the reason for it, there's 2 reasons. Number 1, if you do it on your own, it's boring and lonely,
Yeah.
right? And number 2, time, effort, money, expertise, all those types of things. And I would link that with, getting educated as well, because at least then if you're an exec,
See, he's done 2 there. Do you see he's done 2?
Yeah, I did, but
it's
I
your
would-
podcast.
Yeah, but it getting educated as
When
well
you're
is
talking,
part-
you're in the hot seat, basically.
but even if you don't get educated, you've got to have that somebody who's going to tell you no, that's the wrong thing to do, and you need somebody who's willing to do that and has the expertise to explain why. Because if you're an entrepreneur, no isn't something that you're used to hearing, but it's so important, especially in property, because we've got some at the moment where clients where we've got people coming to us who aren't clients saying, I've messed up. And the reason they've messed up is they haven't got the right expertise. That's it. There's no, and they didn't have the right expertise to commence their project, not the other way around.
Love it. Same question.
Same question. So I think for me in property development, I think the biggest issue with new investors is, I think we've sort of touched on it, but you don't know what you don't know in a way because you don't have the experience. So touching back to the non-exec, whether it's a non-exec or a joint venture partner or an educator or something like that, you need to team up with people who have a decent amount of knowledge and experience. Because if you don't, you just move forward in the trap of not getting the right team on board and all those sort of things straight away. Whereas if you team up with just one of those persons that's got decent experience, they go, okay, all right, we need to get a project manager now. We need to get a quantity surveyor. We need to build up and look, and we need to find contractors. We need to find acoustic engineers. We need to find structural engineers. Whereas if you don't team up with that person, you literally don't know who those people are that you should be getting on board. And then you just go, I just need to find a builder. Or I just need to find an architect. And then you have real issues with those 2 people. And you lose money, it becomes a disaster. But all of that could be avoided by talking to you or another person with loads of experience or whatever. That just gets solved at the top end. And then on the flip side, if it goes smoothly, again, you don't know what you don't know. So when you are talking to people, 2 or 3 projects in that space isn't enough. It's 10, 15,
Yeah, don't
20.
bin that person off after one project.
Yeah, but my point is, if someone's they've just done a couple of projects and they've gone relatively smoothly, unfortunately, they don't know what they didn't know either. They haven't encountered some of the major shit. They haven't had a builder go bump halfway through. They haven't had major utility delays. They haven't had major structural problems and all those sort of things. Someone that's done for 20 years or 40 years, you've seen the good and the bad, haven't you? So the higher percentage are successful, really good projects, but you really learn from the small percentage where things have gone wrong completely out of your control. But you learn how to deal with it and get through it. Whereas if you don't have that person, when that shit happens, that can happen, that inexperienced person doesn't know how to deal with it, doesn't know how to get through it. And that's
Emotionally or practically.
Yeah, emotionally. And yeah, it's a good way to put it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's it. Thanks very much for coming along. It's been an absolute pleasure. I think our listeners are going to get a huge amount of value from you coming on. So we really, really appreciate you coming up here.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
And until the next one, that's the Financial Freedom Podcast. Make sure, if you have not subscribed, please subscribe to this podcast and promote it to your friends, family, colleagues, etc. Thank you very much.
Thank you once again for joining us on the Financial Freedom Podcast, sponsored by us at Property Portfolio Building. If you want to get in touch with us about today's podcast or any of the topics, learning topics that we've gone through today, you can email us at podcast@invest-prop.co.uk or get in touch with us with whichever your social media platform of choice is. If you think you would add value to us as a guest on this podcast, you can please get in touch and let us know what you would be able to talk to us about. Other than that, we wish you well on your financial freedom journeys. And once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the next one.